I think when you started Ather, right? When you told someone, hey, we will build an electric scooter that'll be faster than a petrol scooter, people will laugh. They'll be like, what are you smoking? Actually, most people think, I'm an EV founder in EV space for the second time, so life must be fairly similar. Actually, it's so different.
What are some of the areas in your mind that you think people in the industry fundamentally underestimate how difficult it is to build an energy system infrastructure compared to building OEMs where you've got so many global benchmarks?
In some sense, it's not just dumb infra, right? This is a lot of technology and a lot of infra. The way I like to think of it is the energy ecosystem. There's a little bit of technology, a little bit of infra, a little bit of operations, a little bit of user experience. Right? Most OEMs sell their vehicle once. We actually meet our customers twice a day, every day. So every day we got to ensure the right vehicle turns up at the right charging station, charging happens.
Welcome to Driven, the AdvantEdge podcast, where we deep dive into ideas, innovation, and individuals shaping the future of mobility, electric vehicles, and energy in India. I'm your host, Kunal Khattar, the founder of AdvantEdge, India's leading mobility sector-focused fund. On Driven, we bring conversations from the front lines, speaking to founders, change makers, innovators who are solving real-world problems and moving India forward, one innovation at a time. I am so happy and glad that today I'm being joined by Arun, somebody we've been working with now for almost 5 years. And happy to say that we've backed Arun not once but twice now, the recent announcement of investment in Exponent 1. We started working with Arun 5 years ago with Exponent Energy. So I'm not even going to try to attempt to introduce Arun. I'm going to let him sort of talk a little bit about himself and how he started this whole company, and the fact that he's pretty much spent his entire life in trying to solving and building electric vehicles. So Arun, over to you.
Hey Kunal, it's fantastic to be here. Thanks so much for all the support over the last few years. It's been super fun building Exponent and now Exponent 1 from energy to energy financing. I a little bit about myself. I've just loved building stuff. Since I was young, started messing around. My parents were nice enough to let me do it. Pulled apart a lot of things, didn't really put it back together. Eventually got better at it. I think college is when I really started building stuff more seriously. I was a competition Formula student where we used to build race cars and then race them on Formula 1 circuit. So I actually have driven a car on the Silverstone circuit and at Hockenheim Ring. This was like 2010. And I remember Swapnil and I used to represent IIT Madras. Swapnil was a co-founder at Ather, and I used to represent IIT Madras. And we used to get tulped, right, so badly by all these tier 2, tier 3. I mean, we walked there with a chip on our shoulder saying, we're from IIT Madras.
These were ICE vehicles?
These were ICE vehicles back then. They were not EV yet. But we used to get absolutely pasted by tier 2, tier 3 colleges. And I think that was a big wake-up call. Like,
you would complete the race or that also?
No, we would barely complete the race, right? So I think we sucked on both reliability and on performance. It was a double whammy. And
so good learning.
Good learning. And it was just such a big wake-up call. Like, we just didn't know how to build. Like, India didn't know how to build products or anything.
That helped you build your product first thinking came from your initial failures.
It was like a big slap on the face. It's like, man, like what? Like everyone's just talking, building software services. No one's really building anything.
Hardware is hard.
Hardware is hard. Yeah. So I think that was the big wake up call. And since then, it's just been like, we will build hardware and deep tech in India. So that's been the mission.
So I know that when most people are sort of 16 years old, we're talking about figuring out life, and there you were as a 16-year-old. Instead of trying to pass a driving test, you're actually building your first vehicle. And there is a story behind that, right? And for our viewers to understand what motivated to build your first vehicle at home at that age.
Man, you're putting me on the spot. I told you the story in confidence.
Okay, nobody listens to this podcast. Don't worry.
Oh, that's some confidence. But no, so I was in high school and I got dumped by my girlfriend back then, and I was so angry, like I guess any average teenager. I don't know what to do with all that anger. And my friend, my best friend, who's still my best friend now, his dad had a garage, like a factory. They had fabrication, like metal, sheet metal cutting, welding. So we just got together and started cutting and welding stuff. Soon that idea became, hey, we used to build a car. So we went to the junkyard. There's a scrapyard in Bangalore in Shivaji Nagar. It's called Gujri, where you can buy all these like second-hand
Bits and
parts,
pieces,
bits and pieces. Right? So we started sourcing individual components. We learned to put together, and the vehicle ran really well. I didn't have brakes, but it was really fun to drive, and I was so genuinely happy. I think that was probably my first switch, right? But I said, man, I just want to do this all my life, and that led to the Formula Student Project in college. So this was pre-college.
Yeah.
And in college, met Swapnil, started building all that stuff. I guess the second switch was what we spoke about earlier, which is turning up internationally and realizing that we're not too great. So I think these two things have really put me on the mission.
You're building your own Autobots at the age of 16. So amazing. So you basically spent your entire life in mobility and transportation. Okay, great. And then you started Ather. That on campus, you partnered with Arun and Swapnil, and so you basically haven't worked in any other industries. So what was it that sort of, we've heard about Ather so much, and it's one of the most successful EV mobility companies. Some people call it the Tesla for two-wheelers, and that's amazing. As the founding partner and chief product officer, you helped build India's first vertically integrated EV OEM, right, from scratch. Just walk us through a little bit about what that experience and that journey was on building that technology, and what are the kind of challenges that you faced being, one thing we talk about is first mover disadvantage in India. So I'd love to get your perspective on how it was building Ather and what were the things that you did that stood out?
Yeah. I think this was 2013 when Ather started, right out of college, fairly blue-eyed, and I still remember our very first plan was with $1 million we will launch this product. We were so wrong. But I think starting up was not... I still think I'm an accidental entrepreneur. Starting up was never the objective, right? Here I'm 22 right out of college, and I got the opportunity to design and lead the entire product design for a vehicle, right? So I guess that was more exciting to actually build. It was very clear. I think when we looked around, 2013 is Tesla had happened. I think the Model S was launched in 2012. So it was evidently clear that EV technology was superior to ICE in many regards. And if you could just rethink the fundamental architecture, you could build an EV that's superior. So I think that was the core thesis. A lot had to be done. Everything from back then, battery technology, even something basic like BMS wasn't available. Motor controllers, man, I remember, I think by the time we launched the Ather product, every key component, we had changed out 2 or 3 suppliers. We started with suppliers. Some of these suppliers would not even exist by the time we gotten closer to production. So I remember that happened 2-3 times. So it was a very nebulous phase of the EV industry. And I think we bet on the fundamentals, just build a great product. I think that was the product philosophy. As that's something that I drove hard. Is the fact that it's electric doesn't matter. Most people don't care about the environment. Most people don't care about wanting to do better for humanity, and that's okay. And if you want to bring about change, you can't. You got to deliver products that really pack a punch.
Right.
So we just said this will be the best scooter. Period. It just happens to be electric, and it's done a job. It's won pretty much every award.
Yeah.
It's beaten cars in a lot of categories in digital features, etc. And
phenomenal story. Okay, let's talk about the insight that sparked Exponent or the need for Exponent. So while building Ather, at what point did it become clear to you that it was the charging time or the energy stack that really needs to be solved for rapid adoption of EVs, not just a great product? And at what point did you think that Exponent's value proposition was the way you were going to go about solving for that? So just what is that specific moment or realization that made that decision inevitable to leave Ather and start Exponent?
Yeah, that was a hard decision, but I think what I think spending a few months got very excited. The proposition of building an energy company, and just to sort of set context, I think when we started Ather, right, when you told someone, hey, we will build an electric scooter that'll be faster than a petrol scooter, people would laugh. They'll be like, what are you smoking? Right? But fast forward to 2020, most people thought that's obvious, like because so many OEMs had launched pretty decent products. Um, not just in two-wheelers, right? Across categories from two-wheelers, three-wheelers. You started seeing a few electric buses, electric cars. So the fact that an electric vehicle is faster, it's sexier, it's better on the drive side, etc., was not unbelievable, right? But when you walked around and asked why are you not buying electric, right? The fundamental reason was still energy. Where do I charge? How long will it take? Will my battery last? Right? So we really thought about it. The hindrance to adoption was not the vehicle platform per se. It's actually fundamentally energy. Right? And energy is not just charging. I think it's battery technology, battery life, charging ecosystem. So we really looked at that as a holistic piece. And so the question we asked ourselves is, what if energy for EVs is so seamless? Right? What if EVs energy just came to you? What energy is so accessible was far more affordable than what it was. Right. And we think this is key, right? Because with every generation of mobility, from the time people start walking to horses to steam engines to like diesel engines to faster and faster vehicles, every generation vehicles have gotten faster, they've delivered more freedom, they become more accessible to the masses. Right. So I think EVs have gone through those phases of being toys for the rich, starting from 2008 to fairly mainstream vehicles. Right. So we think for EVs to truly deliver freedom and accessibility at scale, it's not a function of the vehicle platform. It's actually a function of the energy stack, which is battery plus charging in the entire ecosystem. So we thought that's the linchpin effect. So on a personal mission, it wasn't just about building more and more vehicle platforms. Like Ather continues to sell platforms that I helped launch, but can we actually enable multiple categories to go electric simultaneously? And one of the key constituents became commercial vehicles, actually. Yeah. Right. So while the original idea was to build a platform play within Ather, I quickly realized this is not a two-wheeler problem. Like two-wheelers in India barely consume any energy. It's actually commercial vehicles that need this platform. So that's when we realized, oh man, this has to be a separate company, right? Because the technology, the power levels, like today we're doing buses which take 1.5 megawatt of power, right? So very different problem, very different technology platform, very different set of customers, right? You're now catering to commercial vehicles, fleet operators, etc. And this is I think what's needed for India to electrify commercial vehicles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that we totally believe in as well as a fund, where 10% commercial vehicles consume 70% of India's energy. So that's what you really get high operating leverage. Great. Exponent's core values, and I love that, is break, believe, build. I just want to sort of get a sense in terms of how is that a fundamental sort of culture that you're trying to build? But with respect to what were the sort of the learnings that you brought from Ather, whether it was in the product architecture point of view or building ecosystem, how much of that was sort of learnings that you brought in? Of course, Ather is fundamentally different to what you're doing at Exponent. Whether it was technology choices, whether it was customer centricity, or whether it's GTM, how is life different in Exponent? And and why is that philosophy of Exponent of break, believe, build the right way?
Actually, most people think, I'm an EV founder in EV space for the second time, so life must be fairly similar. Actually, it's so different, right? At Ather, we were building the vehicle, and we were, in some sense, a product company. And we're selling two-wheelers to fairly upper middle class, and top sectors of the market. Very different problems. Exponents basically going from the top tip of the pyramid to really going to the large foundational layers of logistics, right? We sell to commercial vehicle operators and fleet operators, and that's a hard market. That's a very different market. It's a brutal market. They're not buying anything because it's cool, right? They're not buying something because you just get delivering incremental value. Very value seeking, hard value seeking industry. So that's That also makes you focus a lot more. Maybe you're also building a company for the second time around, so you're probably a little more focused on how do you get there faster and how do you achieve that faster. Uh, Second bit is about GTM, right? Like everything, the most complex thing about Exponent is GTM. Because in some sense, I guess what we brought from Ether was just we knew how to build hardware products. But everything about our architecture, our technology, everything was, there was no global benchmark. Nothing in the world charged in 15 minutes. Even today, buses and trucks don't really charge in 15 minutes. So everything from power levels to architectures was brand new. But we brought in that, I guess, know-how of how do you build products, how do you test, how do you break products in the lab, how do you sort of iterate on it quickly. So I guess we brought in that sense of culture. But one of the hardest pieces for Exponent has been GTM, right? Because we're not building the product. So, we need OEMs to adopt us.
Right.
And then OEMs will sort of get to market and we sort of co-create the product market with us. And we've had some ups and downs there. And of course, over the last couple of years, we've really fixed a lot of that. We've now got in our OEM agnostic programs. We've now got something like Exponent One that allows us to accelerate the rate of adoption. So I think last 1.5 years, we've really innovated heavy on the GTM. But yeah, I guess the concept break, believe, build comes from quickly iterating, constantly breaking the assumptions, constantly believing in the team through all of this. And I think fundamentally what's common about the entire team at Exponent is love to build, whether you're in marketing or brand building or even GTM. Like our GTM team is just having so much fun building these brand new first of its kind GTMs. Like never as an energy company had to think through
Right. Absolutely.
a vehicle and financing ecosystems, right? So of course, if you're in engineering, then you're obviously building a lot at Exponent. So we love building that sense of constantly iterating internally. You don't iterate with the customer in the field, so that culture of celebrating mistakes and failures, culture of honestly owning up to stuff not working. Because then there's more honest conversations internally. You're able to validate quicker. You're able to test and break faster, quicker. So I think that's where the culture comes from. And we have a strong belief of approach over results. Because when you're building something that doesn't have global benchmarks, you can't judge people on the results.
Right.
Because then everyone will take very safe targets, and then no one will take moonshots. So we really want people at Exponent to take moonshots, which means we judge them on the approach. Hey, are you chasing the right thing? And are you really giving it all you have? Because we know if you're trying hard stuff, things will fail. So you can't say, hey, your experiment failed, so you're a bad engineer. But your approach was right and you're trying the right thing. And we know if you stick at it, eventually you will get the right solution.
Right.
So that's sort of our entire cultural framework that allows for innovation.
Right. That's great. First principle thinking. So, with Ather, it was about building vehicles, and now with Exponent, it's about building infrastructure. Both of them, of course, have its own set of challenges, and you've got learning curves. But why, of the two, honestly, I think building infrastructure is significantly more difficult. Because very few people are trying to attempt to do that. And to your point, there's very few global benchmarks to what you're trying to do. What are some of the areas in your mind that you think people in the industry fundamentally underestimate how difficult it is to build an energy system infrastructure compared to building OEMs where you've got so many global benchmarks?
Yeah, in some sense, it's not just dumb infra, right? This is a lot of technology and a lot of infra. The way I like to think of it is the energy ecosystem. There's a little bit of technology, a little bit of infra, a little bit of operations, a little bit of user experience. Right? Most OEMs sell their vehicle once. We actually meet our customers twice a day, every day. So every day we got to ensure the right vehicle, transfer to the right charging station, charging happens. And all of this in India where your grid doesn't work 15 to 20% of the time. So a lot of constraints. And you got to do this at price points that Indian commercial vehicle operators are good with. But it's exciting because, once you crack this and you got this model that works reliably in Indian conditions and Indian price points, man, this can work anywhere. And that's what's exciting. I think historically in petroleum, Indian OEMs built the products, but, the foundational blocks always came from Japanese or German companies, right? I think Exponent, I guess, on a personal mission is going deeper and deeper in that personal mission to build deeper tech. I think for me, it was about not just building the product now in India, but also how can we build the foundational pillars for automotive and for energy in India. So that's what's exciting. I think the hardest bit is that ecosystems don't get created on meritocracy, right? We have 15-minute charging and our batteries last forever. All vehicles should have exponent powered batteries today, right? That's what you think. That's what I think. But I think B2B partnerships, ecosystem creation with large partners in your vicinity, I think takes time. And I think probably the biggest delta and learning for me has also been patience. How do you build exponent with the right amount of patience, and having investors like you help.
So, I mean, if you look at where Exponent is, right, it's in the intersection of product, battery, energy, and now with Exponent One, it's finance. And really, that's sort of the flywheel or the proposition that we're building. You know, everybody compares us to China. China has had an entire different way in which they've electrified, and they're global leaders and they own the whole value chain. In your mind, what is it that you think India should do differently? And I'm guessing that Exponent in many ways is building a unique business model, which I have not seen anywhere in the world. Is that the way we can build an India first, India centric business that can fundamentally be superior to what China has believed? Because China's product and strategy has been very fundamentally different to what we are building. And we're building more in India's first product, which to a large extent will be the right electric or EV solution for the global south.
You know, I kind of think slightly differently about China. I think what China is great at is core technology and material science. I mean, apart from one or two companies, I don't actually think China has that many great product companies. And I might get cancelled for saying this. They've got the best-in-class foundational tech and material science, right? So I think that's a different
Muscle.
That's a different muscle.
Yeah, we can't compete.
We can't win that game. We should try and we should invest in now, but that's a 10, 20-year compounding problem statement, starting all the way from university and PhD capabilities, right? Startups can't win that game, right? But what I do think is category-specific products that are very deep and really know your customer, know your operations, know your market is how we win this. For example, the best electric two-wheelers don't come from China now. They come from India. It's not one company. It's a bunch of companies that are building world-class electric two-wheelers right out of India.
And maybe because we are the largest two-wheeler market in the world.
And because we're one of the largest two-wheeler markets in the world. We're also one of the largest commercial vehicle markets in the world. We're possibly not a very large passenger vehicle market in the world.
Number 4.
Which is what China and Europe and US care. Well, nothing really happening in Europe and US. But apart from Tesla. So, you know, China will dominate the passenger car product market. China will dominate the foundational technology and material science layers. But there are a lot of product categories that are wide open, which are not just superficial product and integration layers, which need fairly deep engineering and deep integration and deep technology build-outs. We are picking commercial vehicles and energy for commercial vehicles as the largest problem statement here. It is India's largest energy market, right? And I don't think, for a lot of reasons, like for example, China is not a very big bus market, right? Because they have high-speed metros, they have a lot of planes, a lot of cars, whatever, right? They don't have as much intracity commercial vehicles as India does. Neither is US. So whatever the reasons are, these are large markets that are uniquely Indian. India is the 4th largest economy. It's only going to get bigger. Our fleet size is only going to get bigger. And India is also one of the world's largest exporter of commercial vehicles. So I think just like two-wheelers, we think commercial vehicles and commercial vehicle technology, India has the right to win. And I don't think you have to win this by just building financial and operational sort of wrappers. I think that's been the problem. Historically, startups / investors, founders, everyone's just trying to build a superficial sort of wrapper, just a distribution wrapper or a financing wrapper.
Right.
I think it's clear, the jury is out there that you can't win the EV business like that. So I think there's a lot of depth of technologies and products that India has the right to build. You just have to believe in it.
Right. Arun, you've been through that entire product life cycle. Building Ather, building Exponent. Now, a lot of our people listening into this podcast are first-time entrepreneurs wanting to build in the EV ecosystem. Of course, nobody can deny the AI hype that we're in right now.
Yeah.
So just do a little bit of crystal ball gazing. Is what are the, in your point of view now, we're in 2026, given where AI is and how fast it's adopting, in your mind, since you understand this domain so well, what are some of the exciting opportunities or businesses or propositions that we can build today at the intersection of mobility, energy, and AI, which people listening in can start thinking about, because that's really something that we could probably be first in market, and it's a level playing field, right? So just want your perspective on what's the way forward. What are things that excite you?
I know you probably have more inputs here. As a founder, you end up becoming very one-dimensional. You're so obsessed with your own problem. and today, I'm very excited by energy financing.
Yeah.
I think it's a large opportunity. Combination of energy tech, energy data. We call it energy intelligence. And combination of AI to have more adaptive, more dynamic underwriting. I think this is needed to get a large part of India to go electric. It's an opportunity for financial inclusion. I think there's decentralized grids. There's so much to do on grid tech. I think everything we know about grids will be rethought of in the next 10, 15 years. But I think anything of value in EVs, I don't think you can just sprinkle AI on top. I think it has to be very deeply rooted. I think many years ago, the best software people build their own hardware, right? I think the best AI companies today will have to build something offline very strongly and deep root the AI into that. Or else you're just building a commodity business in my opinion, right? So I think you got to have something offline, something deeply rooted. I think that's the way to build
flying cars. Floating cars.
I think a lot will change about. You asked about AI, but if you think beyond AI,
well, autonomous flying cars, like
for sure,
shared flying taxis and all. We're seeing them come up pretty fast.
For sure. What are you looking to take a bet on?
No, so this is something that we are super excited about. Is like as an investor sector focused, we understand that technology, innovation, and adoption happens in a sequential manner. If I look at mobility, we've traced how mobility or automotive has evolved, where first we had to build connected cars, without which we would not have had shared mobility. Connected cars could have been through an OBD device or just slapping a smartphone into that. Or now we have vehicles themselves have become IoTs. And then you were able to build an Uber or a Rapido. So once you had that, you realized that once cars were connected and shared, you were able to increase the utilization of that. And we, in India, at least, we're at a point where we are transitioning and seeing how we can now build electric vehicles in those shared platforms now, whether it's shared mobility, last mile delivery, quick commerce, etc. And the reason is energy still is the largest expense in a vehicle's P&L, right? So when you move and replace a diesel or CNG with electric or EV, you're able to bring down the total cost. I think for us, autonomous is probably going to happen after we see full electrification of that ecosystem, because India labor is still a very small component of that cost, as opposed to the US, where labor is probably 70% of the cost of a mile in an Uber, because people in America want to make $30 an hour. So that is why we are seeing rapid adoption of autonomous driving. So we think in India, it's probably at least the autonomous driving that we see popularizing with companies like Tesla and all is still some times away. We're going to see, of course, narrow adoption of autonomous vehicles. So that's sort of the sequencing in which we feel. And as a fund, we don't want to invest ahead of that adoption cycle. Definitely don't want to invest late into that adoption cycle. And I guess that's why we think as a sector focused fund, we are able to sort of move and invest or deploy capital probably 4 to 5 years ahead of when things start becoming popular and where we start seeing rapid adoption of technology.
Is this a thesis that you walk in with? I mean, for example, you bet on Exponent a bunch of times. You
Right.
bet on us twice, Exponent 1. What are the early signs that you're looking at? Right? Do you walk in with a thesis with founders? Are you looking? What are the signs with founders you're looking at?
I think we do a lot of first principle thinking. So I think we come around and say, oh, so when we were between 2015 and 2017, we were focusing on shared mobility. The realization was that, we've seen rapid adoption of Uber and Didi in other markets, but we realized very quickly India is a very different market. US and China, 95% of four-wheelers. India, it's just 9%. So we invested in Rapido because we knew that India can have a shared mobility platform, but it's going to be a form factor which is 60% of the car park, which was two-wheelers. So a lot of first principle thinking of fundamentally knowing that there is an opportunity to build, but choosing the right product. For electrification also, and now that we have so many companies that are well established, we know the need to electrify is very, very high. And the reason for that is we spent so much time with the founders of these shared mobility, delivery, ride hailing, quick commerce, and they're crying for electrification to bring down their operating cost. But because commercial vehicles is just 9 to 10%, all the OEMs are focusing on building consumer products, personal mobility products, whether it's the form factor, whether it's the energy stack, whether it's the financing solution. So here you have a hair on fire problem for commercial vehicles, but the entire market and the capital is flowing to personal mobility. And for us, that's the opportunity where we think that if we want to really build an EV infrastructure in India, we've got to prioritize commercial use cases over personal mobility. That will deliver superior return on equity. That will allow us, and we're always a capital deficit country, right? We don't have access to the kind of capital at China. We're going to have to do it in a frugal, capital efficient way, but do it in an India first way of thinking. And that's fundamentally why we have a thesis on how we can electrify. And Exponent is absolutely bang in the center of that, is focusing on commercial, focusing on leveraging energy stack, focusing on delivering superior value to the commercial vehicle owner that's looking for, an efficient, scalable solution and not looking for the prettiest products in the market.
Correct.
Anyways,
and I think beyond the thesis and your belief in the business model, what are you looking for founders, right? When you're betting on them, I've never asked you this before.
I'll tell you. No, it's a great question. I would say a majority of investments we've made are in pre-product, definitely pre-revenue, in many cases pre-product. Which is why, we're not a career VC. I'm not a career VC, right? I've been a 3-time entrepreneur. What I've realized is that if you're going to partner with founders in that -1 to 0 or 0 to 1 journey, ultimately founder market fit is probably the most important criteria or checkbox that we have when we look to partner with people like yourself. And what we've seen in that 8 to 10 year journey, there's a high probability that every other aspect of the business will change, whether it's the product that you're building or the customer segment that you're targeting or the GTM or the, financing or the revenue model. What doesn't change in that journey is the founders. So I think that for us is extremely important, especially at the stage that we come in. Our definition of founder market fit is a founder that's probably got a very deep understanding of that specific domain or of the customer for whom he's building that solution. And therefore is probably the best suited to find a solution for that. And apart from that, of course, founders got to be passionate, focused, and all of that. But if there's one thing that for us we've seen is a high predictor of success, it's founder market fit. Product market fit is probably well into a series A or B, but that's probably what we really focus on. And you pretty much, since the age of 16, all you've done is trying to build mobility solutions. And what we found that, the kind of insights that you had on the EV infrastructure space, having sort of been involved with Ather from day one, you were able to pick out and see what is it that's going to create a bottleneck going forward in India's adoption of EVs. And that's why it's been an absolute incredible journey, 5 years. And today we've just announced partnering with you again with Exponent One. So hoping that this is the second of many journeys that we have together.
I spoke about why I'm excited to build Exponent Energy and energy ecosystems. But that's also like such a asset heavy, non-VC, non-investable problem statement, right? What's made you believe in it, and how do you think of asset heavy businesses in India's context?
So we've always avoided. So our philosophy is simple. In that 0 to 1 journey, from the time that you're sort of building, you have a thought process, you have a thesis, and you want to build it out and prove it till you do a successful pilot and all. It's always good to be asset light as long as you can, for a couple of reasons. Equity or capital is very expensive in India. Second, what we've seen is that many companies who scale asset heavy businesses lose the flexibility or their ability to do minor or major pivots to their business. Right? If you've got 15,000 cars on your books, you can't really change and say, I want to change the form factor or to change the business model. That fixed cost is what sort of pulls a lot of companies down. If you have strong product market fit, you have strong unit economics, and you're profitable, at that point, you can start adding assets to your books. So that's one. Second is, we've been very wary of allowing, or at least, founders taking debt on their books. I think the only exception we make is that don't use venture debt to fund losses or operating burn. For that, you're better off using equity. But if you're taking leverage to buy an asset that generates revenue for your business, and that free cash is sufficient for you, more than sufficient to service that debt, is probably the only reason or the only way you should probably use debt. So use debt carefully. So if you really have to build an asset-heavy business, make sure there's sufficient cash flow to service that debt. Now, with Exponent Energy, there is some physical sort of assets on your books. What we like about that business is that those assets generate a ton of money at a high margin, relatively high margin business, right? And that's enough to service that. And that's a scalable model. So it's sort of a hybrid. It's not a pure digital company where you have zero assets, but it's also not a business where you have very high fixed cost. And those fixed costs are not necessarily generating revenue. And I think the initial sort of pilots that we did, we saw that there was very high customer love and repeat and retention. I mean, 98 or 99% of your customers come to your network to buy their energy.
That's right.
So if you look at those data points, it sort of gives you comfort that if you're taking leverage, go ahead, because that business can support that.
Yeah, and we also, pretty much every vehicle out there is sold to a customer. Yeah. We don't lease them. That's something I'm very proud of.
The other thing is, of course, when you talk about asset, it's just the infrastructure that's on your books. Yeah. And I think now you're also looking at ways in which to sort of offload that investment as well. So it's a hybrid.
Yeah.
But no, so that's, I think it's, and you have strong product market fit.
I think in a business like us, I think a lot of people mistake that we're actually asset heavy. I think the big expense is actually just R&D. Right?
Yeah. Which is an investment, not an expense.
Exactly. So, I mean, I'm glad you say that, because I think most VCs still understand burning for CAC, but it's not burning for R&D, because it's actually an investment, right? You could burn and acquire a customer and lose a customer overnight, but when you invest in R&D, that's your intellectual property for life, right? So how are you seeing the ecosystem evolve around this, right? I keep talking about people being not an asset-heavy business at all. Of course, we have inertia compared to SaaS companies, but that's because of our deeper J curves on R&D. How do you, since you've started AdvantEdge, how have you seen that ecosystem evolve? How have you built comfort around investing in? And a lot of your companies today are into hardware, so you're probably now very familiar with it. But how do you see the ecosystem getting there?
I think a couple of things. I think one is people understand that deep tech or hardware is hard by the nature of the business. Software is hard, hardware is 10x harder, because you're building hardware and software. So I think the good news, of course, is that both from a regulatory standpoint, I think that emphasis on R&D creating intellectual property and all that focus that's there today was not there 10 years ago. I think 10 years ago, people were solving for basic needs, e-commerce, quick commerce, and all of these. Not to say that these are not difficult problems to solve. Absolutely. I think the country needs all of them. What's changed now, I think, is the recognition that, look, there is enough capital available. There are now funds who specialize in solving these hard problems, whether it's deep tech, whether it's EVs, energy. So there is more and more realization that you can build such companies. You just have to have a little bit more patience about it. You're not going to see that J curve in the first 1 or 2 years. I mean, we've been working for 5 years, right? And we've built phenomenal IP, incredible technology. Revenue is still not what it should be or should have been, and we are patient. I think anybody who's come on board recognizes that if that is probably going to be our biggest competitive moat. So moat should never be scale, right, or brand. It has to be technology. And we feel that, these hard journeys or hard things, milestones that we're achieving today with respect to the technology that you're building, the IP that you're creating, is what will actually serve us in building a very large outcome in the business. Because somebody trying to duplicate what we've done, what Exponent has done, is 100x more harder 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And I think that's what gives us a lot of comfort. But you got to be patient about it. It's not overnight success.
Yeah, I agree.
But anyways, Arun, thank you so much for joining us on Driven. And I think what stands out in this conversation is that building in India means solving the reality of speed, scale, and reliability on the energy stack. And that's not just, building for the world, but building in India for the world. And that's incredible. Your journey from Ather to Exponent Energy and now Exponent One is a powerful reminder that meaningful progress in mobility comes from deep engineering paired with relentless execution. Thank you again for tuning in to Driven, the AdvantEdge podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please do subscribe and share. Until next time, stay driven.